The first time I heard her voice, she was yelling at my 76-year-old mother for having a flower pot that according to her was 2 inches over the regulation limit. That should have been the moment I realized we were dealing with something worse than just another HOA busybody. But I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that Gloria Strickland, self-appointed queen of the Willow Creek HOA, was going to drag us into a months-long war that would end with her in handcuffs and me holding a court order with her name on it. My name's Dean Jacobs. I work HVAC, own my house outright, and I moved back in with my mom temporarily after my dad passed to help her get back on her feet. We've lived in Willow Creek for over 20 years. Quiet neighborhood, mostly retirees, until the HOA board got taken over by a bunch of control freaks with nothing better to do. Gloria was the ringleader. She wore pastel cardigans like armor and carried a clipboard like it was a sword. The kind of person who introduced herself as chairwoman Gloria Strickland like that meant something outside her little kingdom. From the moment she saw my mom tending the garden, Gloria started circling like a vulture. Started small. First, it was, your hydrangeas are encroaching on the sidewalk. Then your porch light is 8 watts too bright. My mom, being the sweetheart she is, tried to comply. But it was never enough. Gloria kept coming back, each complaint more ridiculous than the last. One Friday morning, I was in the garage working on the lawn mower when I heard shouting from the front yard. I stepped out and saw Gloria standing on our walkway, pointing a shaking finger at my mom, who looked pale and stunned. "I'm not going to say it again, Margaret," Gloria snapped, her voice shrill. "If you don't remove that illegal bird feeder by tonight, the HOA will fine you $500. And if you think that's the worst I can do, you've got another thing coming." "Hey," I said, walking up fast. "Back up. You don't talk to her like that." Gloria turned, eyes narrowing behind her oversized sunglasses. "This is HOA business, Mr. Jacobs. Your mother's continued noncompliance is a violation of Section 12, Article 5. You're harassing her," I said. "She's 76 and you're threatening her over a freaking bird feeder. Get off our property." She adjusted her cardigan like it gave her authority. "I'm well within my rights. I'm not telling you again." Gloria stomped off, muttering something about legal counsel. I didn't think much of it until 2 days later when my mom found a notice taped to our door, HOA violation, $500 fine for unauthorized feeder installation. She looked like she was going to cry. That was when I started digging. I spent the next few nights reading our HOA bylaws, county ordinances, and anything else I could find. Turns out bird feeders weren't banned. In fact, there was a ruling from 2 years ago where a judge dismissed a similar violation as arbitrary enforcement. The HOA had no leg to stand on. I brought this up at the next HOA meeting, which Gloria chaired. "I'd like to address the fine issue to my mother," I said, standing up. "It's not legally enforceable." Gloria didn't even look surprised. "Mr. Jacobs, this meeting isn't for personal grievances. It's not a grievance. It's a legal fact. Your violation notice cites a clause that doesn't exist. I have a copy of the bylaws right here." People started murmuring. A few neighbors leaned in, whispering. Gloria's lips tightened. "This meeting is adjourned," she snapped, slamming her folder shut. That's when I knew I had her. She wasn't just misinformed, she was abusing her power, hoping no one would call her out. But I wasn't done. Not even close. She retaliated fast. The next week, we got 3 more violation notices: grass too high by 1 inch, mailbox not HOA approved, and improper trash bin placement. All garbage. All lies. Then it got worse. I came home one afternoon to find my mom shaken. Gloria had come by again, this time yelling. Not about violations, but about knowing people and making life difficult. My mom tried to record it on her phone, but Gloria slapped it away and stormed off. That was it. I wasn't going to let this woman terrorize my mom. I filed a police report for harassment and submitted it along with an affidavit from my mother. I pulled the ring cam footage from that day, which captured Gloria cursing and shoving the phone. I also got statements from 3 neighbors who'd witnessed Gloria's antics. Then I filed for a protective order. It was granted within 48 hours. The restraining order barred Gloria from coming within 100 feet of my mother or our property. She wasn't even allowed to communicate with us in any form. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. But I underestimated her ego. The very next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mom screaming. I bolted out of bed and ran to the front yard. There she was, Gloria, standing on our walkway again, arms crossed, clipboard in hand. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. "I'm here on official HOA business," she said, as if the court order didn't exist. "Your fence color isn't HOA approved. You're violating a restraining order." She didn't even flinch. "I'm within my rights as chairwoman. You're trespassing." She rolled her eyes, turned, and walked back to her car like nothing happened. I called the cops. 15 minutes later, 2 officers showed up. I handed them a copy of the protective order and showed them the door cam footage. They didn't hesitate. They drove straight to Gloria's house and brought her out in handcuffs. She protested the whole way. "This is a misunderstanding. I'm the HOA chairwoman." One of the officers looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you're under arrest for violating a court order. Being on the HOA doesn't put you above the law." And just like that, Gloria Strickland, reigning tyrant of Willow Creek, was stuffed into the back of a squad car, still clutching her clipboard like it might save her. But what she didn't know, that clipboard held the key to unraveling everything. Because inside it was a list of residents she'd been targeting, along with made-up violations, fake fine amounts, and even notes about who wouldn't fight back. And now it was in my hands. The clipboard sat on our kitchen table like it was radioactive. My mom wouldn't even look at it. She'd gone into the living room to call her sister and decompress while I sorted through the mess Gloria had left behind. I didn't blame her. Weeks of intimidation had taken a toll, and now that we finally had some breathing room, I was determined to make this count. I put on gloves before flipping through the pages. Gloria had recorded everything in meticulous, obsessive detail. Names, addresses, so-called violations, personal notes. Some of it was crossed out and rewritten in different colors of pen: red, blue, green, each with its own warped sort of logic. One note near the top simply read, "Too many gnomes, delusional, watch for signs of dementia." Next to it was a name and address. Another page listed a couple with garage door left open, possible drug activity, scrawled underneath. I knew the people in both of those homes. One was a retired kindergarten teacher. The other, a Vietnam veteran who walked with a cane. I kept flipping until I landed on something that made me sit up straighter. A spreadsheet, handwritten, with columns for projected fines, estimated collection, and target schedule. Over the span of 6 months, Gloria had outlined a plan to extract over $25,000 in fines from a dozen homes. Each line had a corresponding infraction, half of which weren't even mentioned in the HOA bylaws. I snapped a photo of every page, then walked it straight to the scanner in the den. My plan was already forming, but I wasn't going to rush it. Not this time. The next morning, I drove down to the county clerk's office. I wanted to make sure a copy of the restraining order violation was on public record. The officer who arrested Gloria had been thorough, but I knew how these things went. Paperwork got buried, and complaints got lost. Not on my watch. While I waited in line, I saw a guy about my age in a polo shirt and slacks drop a heavy binder onto the desk. He looked frustrated, so I asked him what brought him in. "HOA," he muttered. "Same nonsense. Fake violations, trumped-up fines, threats." "Willow Creek?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. He gave me a tired glance. "Yeah." We stepped outside once our business was done. His name was Ryan, and he lived over on Huckleberry Lane, a part of the neighborhood I rarely drove through. He'd been battling the HOA for months on his own. When I told him what had happened with Gloria and the protective order, his jaw tightened like he'd bitten into a lemon. "You're saying you've got proof?" he asked. "Better. I've got her notes. Names, amounts, a plan to bleed folks dry." He exhaled slowly. "We need to talk." That night, he came by with his laptop and a folder of documents. We sat in my garage, away from street view, and went through everything. Ryan had been tracking violations issued across the neighborhood. He'd mapped them out by date and address, flagging repeat targets. The pattern was clear. Gloria and her inner circle were targeting older residents, single homeowners, and anyone who didn't attend the HOA meetings. They're banking on people being too scared or too tired to fight back, Ryan said. Or not knowing the rules. I showed him what I'd found in the clipboard. He froze when he saw his own name listed under Phase 2. Unbelievable, he muttered. I just installed a new mailbox. She said it was non-conforming. Turns out it's the same model as hers. We plotted for the next several days. I reached out to a local attorney, Marisol Vega, who volunteered with a housing justice nonprofit. She reviewed the documents and told us we had enough for a class action suit: fraud, harassment, abuse of power. She even mentioned the possibility of embezzlement if we could prove the fines weren't being deposited properly. HOAs are supposed to be transparent about where the money goes, she said. Annual budgets, itemized spending reports. If she's been making up violations and collecting cash, that's criminal. I asked what our first step should be. Expose her, she said. Publicly. Force an emergency board meeting. Let the neighborhood see what she's been doing. We printed every document. I created a presentation with photos, scanned pages from the clipboard, and a map showing the pattern of targeted homes. Ryan compiled a timeline of violations and fines. Marisol drafted a formal petition to recall Gloria from the HOA board, as per the bylaws. We needed 20% of the neighborhood to sign. We got 32% in 2 days. The night of the emergency meeting, the clubhouse was packed. More people than I'd ever seen show up to anything in Willow Creek. Some stood out front, arms crossed. Others whispered in tight knots, eyeing the board members who sat uneasily at the long table. Gloria was notably absent. I took the mic. I'm Dean Jacobs, I said. Some of you know me, some of you don't. But what I'm about to show you affects every single person in this neighborhood. I clicked to the first slide, Gloria's spreadsheet of projected fines. Gasps rippled through the room. I kept going: target notes, violation patterns, Ryan's map, a copy of the protective order, then finally the arrest report. She's not here tonight because she violated a court order meant to protect my mother, who she harassed repeatedly. But this isn't just about us. It's about dozens of you who were targeted because you were easy to intimidate. Someone shouted from the back, she fined me for a crack in my driveway. Another voice, she tried to have my dog declared a nuisance. Then a third, she told me she'd get me evicted if I didn't take down my flag. The room erupted. A man at the board table, a balding guy named Curtis who'd always played second fiddle to Gloria, stood up, holding his hands out. We didn't know, he said. She handled the fines, the records. I cut him off. Then you failed in your responsibility. Because the bylaws say the board is jointly accountable. Either you clean this up, or we get someone else who will. Marisol stepped forward with the petition. Under Article 9, Section 4, we're calling for a vote of no confidence in the current chair and requesting a full audit of HOA finances. Curtis looked like he wanted to disappear. The vote passed unanimously. What we didn't know was that Gloria had tried to preempt everything by moving HOA funds into a private account. She cleared out over $17,000 in fines, cash, and checks and transferred them the day before her arrest. The police got involved again. This time, they weren't just following up on a restraining order. They opened a full investigation into financial misconduct, fraud, and unlawful use of HOA authority. The fallout was swift. Gloria was charged with multiple counts, including elder harassment, mail fraud, and criminal misappropriation of funds. Her house, once the model of HOA-approved uniformity, sat dark and empty while the investigation proceeded. But the biggest change? The neighborhood itself. People who'd never spoken beyond a nod at the mailbox were now organizing cleanup days, helping each other with repairs, and actually attending meetings. Curtis stepped down, and a new board was elected, people who cared about the community, not control. And my mom? She planted a bigger bird feeder, bright red, with a little hand-painted sign that read, "Freedom flies here." No one questioned it. The mailbox clanged shut just as I was finishing repairs on the back fence. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked around to the front. Inside the box was a thick manila envelope with no return address, just my mom's name scrawled in tight cursive. I opened it slowly, half expecting another leftover threat from Gloria's reign. Instead, the contents made my stomach twist. There were 5 sheets of paper. The first was a ledger reel, typed and watermarked with the HOA seal. It detailed fines collected over the last year. 2 numbers stood out: total assessed, $38,720, and total deposited, $22,100. The second sheet listed bank accounts, 1 legitimate HOA account and 1 I didn't recognize. The third was a scanned check made out to G. Strickland Consulting Services. The fourth was a letter and signed that simply read, "She wasn't working alone." The fifth was a photo, grainy but clear enough. Gloria sitting at a patio table handing a thick envelope to a man I recognized immediately. Curtis. Not only had he known, he'd been in on it. I walked straight into the house and dropped the envelope on the kitchen counter. My mom looked up from her crossword, her expression calm but sharp. She read my face before she looked at the papers. "More?" she asked. "Worse." It was the first time I saw her genuinely angry since everything began. She folded the photo neatly and stood up without a word, heading to her bedroom. When she came back, she handed me an old leather file folder. Inside were documents from years ago, HOA newsletters, financial statements, even meeting minutes from when my dad was still attending. One of them had Curtis's name listed as treasurer. "He's been on that board longer than anyone," she said. And somehow no one ever questioned it. By the end of the day, I'd handed the packet over to a detective named Bellamy, the same officer who'd arrested Gloria for the restraining order violation. He looked through everything, his mouth twitching the way it does when someone's trying not to curse in uniform. "This is enough to open a full financial crimes investigation," he said. "You've done half our job already." I told him I wasn't done. The next few days were quiet, unnervingly so. Gloria's house remained dark, her mailbox empty. The new HOA board, now chaired by a retired engineer named Lydia Tran, had posted a notice about the upcoming audit. But no one had seen Curtis since the emergency meeting. He'd vanished. Until Saturday. I was heading back from the hardware store when I spotted Curtis's SUV outside the old maintenance shed behind the community pool. It was parked behind the building, mostly hidden from the road. I pulled over 2 blocks away, got out, and walked the rest of the way on foot through the side path that used to be part of the nature trail. The shed door was cracked open. Inside, Curtis was kneeling in front of a plastic storage bin, sorting through what looked like old HOA files. I backed away before he could spot me and called Bellamy. By the time the cruiser rolled up, Curtis was gone, but the bin was still there. Inside were envelopes, checkbooks, and a burner phone. There were also handwritten notes with names and amounts, including cash pickups and holiday collections. One envelope had a note that read, "Deposit Monday. Lydia doesn't know." Bellamy took everything, his expression unreadable. "He's definitely trying to cover his tracks," he said. But he just made it worse. The next week, subpoenas started going out. 3 former board members were brought in for questioning. One of them, a nervous man named Roger, broke fast. He admitted they'd been funneling collected fines into a secondary account labeled Community Development Reserve, which had no legal basis in the bylaws. Gloria used it as a slush fund. Curtis handled the deposits. Roger claimed he'd only signed off on it because he was told it was for neighborhood improvements that didn't need public approval. When Bellamy asked why no one questioned the missing money, Roger said, "Because Gloria told us not to leave a paper trail. We were told not to ask questions." The story was unraveling fast. I got a call from Marisol the following Thursday. She'd been working with a civil litigation firm to assist residents who'd paid fraudulent fines. Her voice buzzed with restrained energy. "They're going to file criminal conspiracy charges against Curtis and Gloria," she said. "Possibly money laundering, too. And the DA's office wants your statement." I met with the prosecutor the next morning. Her name was Joanna Reeves, sharp eyes, no-nonsense tone. She asked me to walk her through everything from the first violation notice to the shed discovery. I told her about the anonymous envelope, the photo, and the burner phone. She took notes without looking up. When I was done, she asked one question. "Do you think there are more?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." She nodded. "We're going to find them." The next court date was Gloria's arraignment. I didn't plan to go, but my mom insisted. She needs to see who's not afraid of her anymore. So we sat in the second row of the municipal courthouse as Gloria was led in, wrists cuffed, wearing a beige suit that looked like it hadn't been ironed. She didn't glance at us. Her attorney spoke on her behalf, entering a not guilty plea to 6 counts of fraud, 2 counts of elder harassment, and conspiracy to commit financial misconduct. Curtis was arrested the next day trying to board a flight out of state using a ticket purchased under a fake name. He didn't even make it past security. The neighborhood watched everything unfold like it was a live soap opera. But instead of dividing people, it brought them together. Several homeowners who'd been too intimidated to speak came forward with their own experiences. One woman, Dana, admitted that Gloria had threatened to report her for illegal subletting because her niece visited every weekend. Another man, George, said he'd been fined 3 times for non-standard landscaping because he planted tomatoes in his side yard. Lydia and the new board moved fast. They launched a full forensic audit of every HOA transaction from the last 5 years. They also rewrote several outdated bylaws, removing vague language that had allowed arbitrary enforcement. Most importantly, they passed a transparency amendment. Every financial report would now be posted publicly every quarter, and fines could only be issued with photographic proof and board approval. I was asked to join the new compliance committee. I declined. I told Lydia I'd done my part. Instead, I helped my mom build raised garden beds in the backyard. She'd wanted them for years, but Gloria had once said they disrupted the neighborhood aesthetic. Now, with the sun falling over the fence and the smell of fresh soil in the air, she stood with her hands on her hips, smiling in satisfaction. "Think they'll try to bother us again?" she asked. "No," I said. "And if they do, they'll wish they hadn't." She reached into the bag of seeds and started planting marigolds. Gloria and Curtis's trial was scheduled for the fall. The DA planned to call over 24 residents as witnesses. The charges carried real weight. If convicted, they were looking at serious prison time. But for us, justice had already started taking root. The fear was gone. The silence had broken. And in the space where intimidation once grew, something better was finally taking hold. The neighborhood had remembered who it belonged to. And it wasn't the clipboard tyrants or the backdoor schemers. It was us. Gloria's trial was set for late September, but the true unraveling of her legacy started weeks before a single witness took the stand. It began with a single phone call. I was clearing out old paint cans from the garage when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read Detective Bellamy. I picked up, expecting a quick question about the HOA documents. Instead, his voice was low and clipped. "We may have a bigger problem than we thought." He didn't elaborate over the phone. I drove down to his office at the precinct, where he waved me into a cramped interview room with a whiteboard covered in names and arrows. My stomach turned when I saw how many lines branched out from Gloria's. "We pulled the records from the burner phone we found in the shed," Bellamy said. "There were encrypted backups, but our tech team cracked them. Turns out she wasn't just finding people illegally. She was running a rental permit scam." I frowned. What kind of scam? She and Curtis were fabricating violations, then offering to make them go away in exchange for cash. Not checks. Cash. And not just to homeowners. They were targeting tenants, too. Immigrants, retirees, people living with extended family. Told them they were in violation of occupancy rules and needed to pay permit renewal fees to avoid eviction notices. My hands clenched the arms of the chair. So they were extorting residents? Worse, he said. They impersonated county officials in 3 cases. We've confirmed that 2 people were forced to move out because they thought they were being evicted by the city. I stared at him, speechless for a moment. How long has this been going on? Long enough for the county to get involved. The district attorney is expanding the scope. Gloria's facing felony charges now. We're talking impersonation of a public official, unlawful eviction, financial coercion, and conspiracy to defraud. I leaned back, trying to process it all. I had known she was corrupt, but this was something else entirely. Bellamy tapped a folder on the desk. You're in the clear. So's your mother. But the DA might call you as a witness again. They're building a timeline of how this all came to light. Your documentation played a major role. I nodded, then asked, what about the victims? We're coordinating with a legal aid group. They're offering pro bono help to anyone who lost housing or paid under threat. The county's looking into restitution, but it's going to be a long road. By the time I got home, the neighborhood was buzzing again. Not with gossip this time, but with resolve. Lydia had called a community meeting for that evening. Chairs were set up on the clubhouse lawn, and by the time the sun dipped behind the trees, nearly every household had someone there. No one wore fake smiles anymore. No one fidgeted nervously when board members spoke. Lydia stepped up to a portable mic and raised a hand for quiet. Some of you have heard rumors. I'm here to confirm them. The HOA, under its previous leadership, broke the law. Extensively. Financial crimes, harassment, and impersonation of county officials. The authorities are involved and charges have been filed. Gasps rose from the crowd, but no one interrupted. We're not the same board anymore. And we're not looking for forgiveness. We're looking for a path forward. That starts with full transparency and full accountability. She paused, then added, and it also starts with listening. One by one, residents stood up to speak. A nurse named Teresa shared how Gloria had threatened to tow her car for being parked too long in her own driveway after night shifts. An elderly man named Harold described being fined for suspicious foot traffic because his grandson visited every weekend. A woman named Nor, who lived 2 streets over, revealed she had paid over $2,000 in made-up fines because Gloria had convinced her she'd be reported to immigration otherwise. Each voice added to the weight of what had happened. But more importantly, each voice was being heard now. When it was my turn, I didn't bring notes. I just looked out over the neighbors I'd lived beside most of my life. My dad helped build this community. He laid bricks for half the sidewalks here. My mom's lived here since the day the street got its name. She was threatened, harassed, and targeted because someone thought power meant control. But power, real power, is about protection. About standing up when it's hard. And I've seen all of you do that over the last few weeks. So let's not let this happen again. Not here. Not ever. The crowd clapped not polite applause, but real, grounded appreciation. Not for me, but for each other. For the fact that we'd finally taken our neighborhood back. After the meeting, I was packing up chairs when Ryan approached. He looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen him, hands in his pockets, a small stack of flyers under one arm. Got a minute? He asked. Always. He handed me a flyer. Across the top, in bold letters, it read, Willow Creek Neighborhood Oversight Committee. Underneath was a mission statement about resident representation, quarterly audits, and legal training for board members. We want to make sure this never happens again, he said. We're forming a committee to keep the board in check. No more secrets. No more backroom nonsense. I nodded slowly. You need help. He grinned. We need a chair. I laughed. Let me think about it. For the first time in months, it felt like we were building something, not just repairing damage, but creating something better. 3 weeks later, Gloria's trial began in the county courthouse. The prosecution opened with a blistering account of her actions, backed by dozens of sworn statements and financial records. The jury listened as residents described the fear, confusion, and humiliation they'd endured. When it was my turn on the stand, I told them about the clipboard. The fake violations. The threats. The restraining order. The arrest. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Curtis tried to cut a deal, but the DA wanted both of them to face the same music. His lawyer argued he was manipulated, but the paper trail showed otherwise. Multiple withdrawals, handwritten notes, deposits into accounts tied to relatives. The verdict came in after 4 days of deliberation. Guilty. On all counts. Gloria was sentenced to 7 years. Curtis got 5. Restitution was ordered for the victims, and the judge described their actions as an egregious abuse of community trust. The day after the sentencing, I found a card in my mailbox. No name, just a short message in neat handwriting. You didn't just fix the fence. You fixed the foundation. I didn't know who sent it. Maybe it didn't matter, because Willow Creek wasn't the same anymore. Lydia's board implemented every reform the committee proposed. Monthly open-door sessions, transparent budgeting, community service incentives. Even a scholarship fund for local high school seniors funded by voluntary donations. And my mom? She joined a gardening club with Noor. Every Saturday, they worked on a new patch of wildflowers in front of the clubhouse. Someone painted a mural across the old maintenance shed, turning it from a dumping ground into a community art wall. The first phrase on it, written in bold green paint, read, "We are not afraid." And we weren't. Not anymore.